All right, so a big welcome again to everyone. I have a special guest with me today. That's not Erin, if you haven't noticed. So we have Colleen on with us. She's our National Development Volunteer. Huge job. And in a few minutes when I have a good stopping point, I would love for Colleen to share what she does for us here at Unite for Her. It's very, very impressive. So anyway, let's get started. Thank you, Colleen, for volunteering. Erin is not in the office today, but we always love when we have other staff members join our cooking demos. This is my last class of the May and June session, Flavors of Mexico. So we'll be talking all about Mexican cuisine for the next hour. So when we think of Mexican, we think of tacos, burritos, enchiladas, taquitos, tostadas, and all wonderful, some of my favorite food, but I thought I would do a little bit of a twist. There's a lot more to Mexican cuisine than what we typically see. So there's a lot of vegetables and some fruits incorporated. Full disclosure, I took all of my recipes from one book that Erin provided. It's called Treasures of the Mexican Table by Patty. I'm not sure if it's Hinch or Hinich. I think it's Hinich. I couldn't even pick what recipes I wanted to do. There were just so many great recipes. So if you happen to maybe hop on Amazon and check out that book, there's a lot of good stuff in there. So 3 recipes today. I have Yvonne cooking with me for the first recipe, refried beans. Anyone else? Is anyone else cooking with me today? Okay, great. So as always, these classes are very laid back, no squares on your passport. If you have any questions, feel free to take yourself off mute. If you are off mute, if you could go ahead and mute, if you're going to have any background noise. If you want to put your questions in the chat, that's what Colleen will be doing. She's monitoring that for me and she'll stop me if there's any questions. So let's go ahead and get started. The first recipe is refried beans. However, I need to get started with recipe number 2, which is zucchini and corn in poblano sauce. So I will talk a little bit about peppers, but I want to go ahead and get this in the oven. So what I'm showing you here is a poblano pepper, and there's really not a lot of heat to it. It looks a lot like a bell pepper, a little bit longer, but it has this beautiful green color. So what I want to do is roast it, and because I want it to take the skin off of it. So the first step to do that, I have my oven preheated at 425, okay? So I'm just putting some oil all over this. If you don't like getting your hands messy, you can use a brush, but I want to coat the entire pepper. All right, just wash my hands off. So what I have over here is a prepared baking sheet with some parchment paper. You can use oil or put it right on your baking sheet because there's a lot of oil, it won't stick. And I'm going to pop it in the oven and set a timer for 6 minutes. Every 6 minutes, I'm going to turn it for a total of 3 times. All right, so first timer, 6 minutes. And that's going. All right, let's talk a little bit about poblano peppers. Again, not starting the refried beans recipe yet. I wanted to talk about peppers. So Mexican cuisine, you know, they can use some peppers with a lot of heat. But being mindful, you know, maybe some of us just don't like to add heat to our recipes, or we're having some GI intolerances or some acid reflux. So I didn't want to go crazy. I like heat, but I don't like a lot of heat. So the original recipes did call for a lot of heat. So I turned them down a little bit, or toned them down a little bit. So if you've never heard of the Scoville scale, and this is what that looks like, and it lists all of the peppers and it shows you how much heat goes on in all of the peppers. So let me read the definition first. Scoville heat unit, also known as SHU, is simply a measurement of the times capsaicin needs to be diluted by sugar water. So the number of SHUs in a pepper or even hot sauce indicates the amount of capsaicin present. So if you see down here in the green, those are bell peppers, 0 heat. The next one up is Anaheim peppers, and here's what I'm using right here, a poblano pepper. So there's a little bit of heat to it, but once you remove the seeds, it's completely fine. And we're roasting them, so more of this, the sweetness comes out of it. So you'll be just fine with that. All right, so that's continuing to roast. Let's move on to the refried beans. This is actually 2 recipes. So before you start the refried beans, because they're refried, obviously you have to cook them first. So never in my life before this recipe have I ever been able to successfully soak my beans. They would be sitting overnight. Then I would cook them on the stove for like 3 to 4 hours, and I would trash the whole thing because I just could not get them to be soft. So when I picked this recipe, I said to Erin, I'm just going to use refried beans and talk about how this is a quick, easy side dish or meal. And she said, no, trust the book, trust Treasures of the Mexican Table. So the simmered beans recipe, when you look at it, you're only simmering it for like an hour and a half to 2 hours. I was like, Erin has to be crazy, but she's never steered me wrong. So sure enough, bag of pinto beans, you rinse it, put it in a lot of water, make sure you have a good amount, and you bring it to a boil with some onion and garlic. And then I add some other seasoning, and hour and a half simmering. So you bring it to a boil, then you turn it down to a simmer, you cover it with the little, the lid a little bit tilted. They cooked. I don't understand how something that was soaked overnight, 3 hours on the stove, didn't do anything, but this is. So it's a fantastic recipe. So obviously I did that before class, and now I'm getting to the refried portion. All right. So I have my beans over here, but I have a skillet right here, and it's heating up. And the first thing that I'm going to do is heat some oil. I am actually using a chili infused oil. So let me get rid of that. There we go. Sorry about that. There was something in the middle of my screen. So I'm using a chili infused oil, just something a little fancy. You can use regular olive oil, avocado oil. I love the color of this. So, and it gives the refried beans a little bit of a kick. Not much, but just a little bit of a kick. So my pan or my skillet is already warm. So I'm going to go ahead and add the onions, but of course I'm going to slice it first. And there's some background noise. If you can mute yourself if you're not on mute.
What is this in the middle? Half-assed, Danielle.
Colleen, can you hit mute on them? Can you see that? There we go. Got it. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so I'm going to, this is a white onion that we add. Most Mexican cooking, you will see white onion. I don't want to add too much onion because you really want the star of the show to be the refried beans. But I want to show you a little bit how I do a fine dice. So here is my onion. So I sliced it down. So it was whole like this. I sliced it down. There are 2 sides, the root end, it's kind of like the hairy end. And then here's the top of the onion. So I still have the skin on. I will cut that off. And I will leave this side on. It makes it a little bit easier to peel once you cut that off. And the next thing. You guys hear me?
You're a little low.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Always an issue with that, with technology and these Zoom calls. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm going to take my knife and slice, but I'm not going to go all the way up to the root. And the reason why is this root is holding my slices together. All right, so here we go. First round. Let's give this a twist. I'm just going to turn it over so it can start roasting another side. Flip this around and be really careful because of the olive oil. Sometimes when I open it, it pops and the oil comes popping out. So just be careful with that. I'll set my timer for 6 minutes. All right. So back to the onion. Take the tip of my knife and go down. And just go all the way. Be very careful, but it's nice because I still have some control of the onion without it sliding around.
Hey, Michelle, what happens if you don't have that exact type of onion? Is that a problem?
No, and I'm glad you asked that. So yeah, I actually said a minute ago that Mexican cooking, you'll see a lot of white onion, but you know, whatever you have on hand, if you've seen our classes before, our cooking demos before, Erin and I are big fans of using whatever you have on hand, never running out to the store if you don't have something like this. And of course, if it's a main ingredient, you might have to, but all right. And I don't even think I'm going to add all of this. But it certainly smells good. If you want to add all of the onion, feel free. Again, I like to really make the beans the star of the show. Just over here. All right. Give this a good stir. All right, I'm going to let this saute for a minute. All right, so let's talk about the different ways you can make your refried beans. So it really depends on the texture. The old-fashioned way is to just get a potato masher and mash your beans. You could also use a food processor, and I'm going to do a little bit of both. So, you know, using the masher, you'll get a little bit more texture, and you don't even have to mash all the beans. You can still leave the whole beans, or you can puree the whole thing and have it more of a smooth or creamy refried bean. And to me, that's the beauty of cooking. Whatever textures or sizes, you know, when you dice or chop something, you know, I feel like in baking, it's a little more absolute. Okay, so let me get my food processor out. If you don't have a food processor, like I said, you can just do the mashing method. If you just have one of those like magic bullets, just do it in batches. If you have an immersion blender, you could use that also. All right, so these are starting to become translucent. So first step, some of this out of the way. The first step is to add your beans. Now, when I simmered my beans, I saved the broth. This broth is really good if you really season it up. If you just add the onions and garlic, it won't be as flavorful. But I was just adding a lot of spices and some salt and pepper. So the flavor is really nice. And we save it for two reasons. Number one, you can add that. Well, you will be adding it to your beans to break it up a little bit and make it more smooth. And the recipe does, what spices did you add?
Right. I had the same question.
Yeah. So two reasons. You'll need this to loosen up your beans. There's actually a measurement on the recipe, of course. I just kind of guesstimated. The other reason is you'll want to save it for the rest of the week. Maybe if you're cooking up grains or lentils, use that as your water base. So, all right, so hold on. So I have 1 bag of pinto beans. I'm just going to add some of this. in. So the spices I used were like cumin, coriander, traditional Mexican spices, which we're going to use. I used salt and pepper, a little bit of chili powder, not too much. Again, I don't like it flaming, but whatever, you know, experiment. You can even use Italian seasoning or like oregano. You can use some fresh herbs. It's kind of like when you're making vegetable soup, or a broth, you're just throwing whatever you have in there. So all I'm doing right now is using my potato masher. You can even use a fork if you don't have a potato masher. And there's a lot of texture still. And if you were just using the potato masher, you would just, you know, you could either add all your beans at once, or you can just do it in batches, whatever works for you. Okay, so I'm going to put the rest in the food processor, turn the sound down just a little bit. All right, let me move this before I get going. How you doing, Yvonne?
I'm good. I'm mashing.
Good. I bet you thought I forgot about you.
No.
Good. All right. So these are going, and you know, there's still some liquid in the pot, so you know, I might not need to add that much liquid once it goes back to the skillet. Okay, so I pureed that all the way down. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of broth. That is it. That's how you make refried beans. The last step though, I'm going to put it onto another burner that's out of the camera and let it simmer for the rest of the class. So all of the flavors marry together and it gets a little bit thicker. Okay, so let me carefully move this aside. Any questions about the refried beans? Nope, no questions. You guys still with me?
Michelle, did you already add in the onion? Sorry.
I did, yeah. So what
Sorry, I don't know how to do that.
so before I put the beans in, can you use canned beans? Yes, I'm going to address that question too. It's a great question. So Yvonne, I put in the onions first and sauteed them, but if
Yeah.
you didn't, it's fine. It's totally fine.
No, I still have them sauteing. I just was mashing the beans separately.
Oh, okay, perfect, perfect.
Throw them in.
And then you could throw them in. Yep.
Perfect.
So originally, so to address the question about canned beans, yes, I was going to do this recipe with canned beans. So for a quick weeknight meal, buy a couple cans of pinto beans. Quite honestly, you can use any type of bean. I think chickpeas would be, or the garbanzo beans would be a little bit harder because they're a little bit, tough and they might not break up as easily, but I'm sure they would if you put them in the food processor. But saute your onions, add your refried beans, put them in a food processor, mash them, and let them cook for a little bit. I would save the aquafaba, which is the bean juice or the liquid, and use that as your liquid to thicken it up. And or you can use vegetable broth. That could be helpful too. So, and I saw the question about the name of the book. It's called Treasures of the Mexican Table by Patty Hinich. And I believe it's Jinich. So I need to clean up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is mute myself and give Colleen an opportunity to talk about what she does with Unite for Her. So Colleen, are you ready?
Sure. So hi, everyone. Colleen Connor. I'm a volunteer for Unite for Her. And I think this is my first cooking class with Michelle. I'm loving this. I'll learn a lot. Not a cook myself, but I went through the program in 2018, 19 as I was going through breast cancer myself. And I just thought, the program just brought me so much healing. It helped me more than, my palliative care team could help me, and especially with nutrition. I was talking to Erin all the time. Michelle didn't work for Unite for Her yet. And I was just so grateful that they were truly the bridge that helped me learn better nutrition for myself and for my family. My kids were shocked that they could eat chocolate muffins, and they were made out of cacao and zucchini. And, and I thought I knew how to somewhat eat healthy, and I really learned a tremendous amount from the nutrition team at Unite for Her. So I'm just so grateful that I give back. So my past experience was working with corporate America. So I started reaching out to different pharmaceutical companies, and I was trying to understand why they wouldn't want to support Unite for Her, especially, as I went through cancer, and I thought, well, these people are making some probably nice funding from the therapies I'm taking. I thought, wow, they should really be supporting the organization that helped me survive. And so I've gone out and I've been talking to these pharmaceutical companies along with Sue Weldon, the CEO, and they've never seen anything like Unite for Her. So it's been a lot of fun helping them see how the organization helps women and help them understand from my own personal experience how they helped me survive and then, eventually thrive more, during the time period. Michelle, I don't know if you need some more time.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you, Colleen. And I'm glad that you mentioned that you went through the program too, which makes it all the more special that Colleen's with us. So thank you. Colleen does really good work with us. It's quite impressive. All right. So if you didn't see, I put the pepper here in a brown paper bag. So it blistered up nicely. Show you. So you can see how it turned black in some spots, and it's steamy and it's very, very soft. So in order to get the skin off, I put it in a brown paper bag for 15 minutes and it will be easy to peel. If you don't have a brown paper bag, you can put it in a bowl and cover it with a dishcloth or a plate, and you'll get the same results from that. All right, so I'll set that aside. We'll be ready for that in a few minutes. All right, so off to recipe number 2, zucchini and corn with poblano sauce. So the poblanos obviously are what I just roasted, what I talked about at the beginning of class. I'm going to heat my large skillet. This recipe makes a lot. So if you are cooking for 1 or 2 people, maybe you cut this recipe in half. However, it does freeze very well. So if you freeze it into individual containers and then you have a quick meal, just pull it out of your freezer and defrost. Because there are no animal products in there, it will last in your refrigerator for up to 5 days. You know, if there was any type of meat or dairy in there, you'd probably want to toss it after 3 days, just from a food safety standpoint. All right. So I'm going to, fingers crossed, everybody, carefully bring all of the next ingredients over. So bear with me. Actually, I'll make life a little bit easier and do this. Okay, this dish is perfect for summer because we're using zucchini, corn, and tomatoes. So if you're growing your own garden, at the end of summer, we have zucchini coming out of our ears, and you can buy fresh corn, use your own tomatoes. So this will be great to use throughout the summer. All right, first step is for me to add some olive oil. You can use avocado oil if you would like. While that's heating up, I'll talk a little bit about the recipe. The recipe called for crushed tomatoes. I'm using diced tomatoes. That's what I had. And I do like a little bit of chunkiness that it adds to the dish because of the corn and the zucchini. But if you just like that tomato base and you don't want to bite into a tomato, use the crushed tomatoes. Totally fine. All right, so the first step is to add the tomatoes. This happens to have basil, garlic, and oregano. There's fire roasted diced tomatoes. I think that would work really well also. Put them right in, and then you can get the petite diced tomatoes. These are a little bit chunkier. I've used both. Both will work really well. So I'll use this one. So meanwhile, off to the side, my refried beans are simmering. So Yvonne, are you at that point where they're just simmering and the steam is coming off?
Yes.
At any point, if you feel like they're getting too thick, go ahead and add a little bit more liquid, but you do want to stir often to avoid them sticking to the bottom.
Got you.
All right. Okay, the star of the show in this recipe is the zucchini. So before class, I diced most of the zucchini. I really did a small dice. I think it cooks down a little bit quicker. So I want to show you what I did. Okay. So I'm going to make 3 cuts. So I just cut the ends off. I cut it in half and carefully slice down. 1, 2, 3. And then you can stack these 2 planks on top of each other. I'm left-handed, so sometimes it's hard to see what I'm doing. I apologize. And then I turn it. Just give it a small dice like that. I'll just do 1 more. Does anybody, and you can put it in the chat, have a garden? Have they You have your garden going and it should be full swing, right? Nope, no one has a garden.
Beth said that she wishes.
Okay.
I wish too. I'm intimidated to start a garden. The idea that I could, I don't know. My neighbor has one and I see them doing it enough. Susan is drowning in squash. Good for you.
There you go. There you go. You don't have a green guy. You know, I don't garden either. My husband does. So I'm the weed puller and the cooker.
Well, it's nice to have that help.
Yeah, absolutely. He's good at it. And it's definitely his therapy. If I just tomatoes this year. Yeah, sometimes it's like you go all out and other years you're like, you know what? This is all I feel like doing. Okay,
Yes.
so the tomatoes are still cooking. I'm going to add some corn. I think using fresh corn from the grocery store, maybe roasting it and then slicing it down the side would be really great. I'm using frozen corn again because that's what I have. The Arrow Garden, yes. So Aaron and I got hooked on the Arrow Garden a couple of years ago, and the herbs were fantastic. We didn't set it up this year. Just didn't get around to it. All right, so added my corn, let that simmer for a little bit. Maybe not too long since I need to move on. So I'm going to go ahead and add my zucchini as well. There's a lot of zucchini. So that's what I meant by this recipe making a lot. I think I'm going to turn it up a little bit higher. I want to get this to a high simmer.
Okay, Michelle, while you're stirring that, Dawn asked if the refried beans need to be in a cast iron skillet. You know, a lot of us don't have those. And even when I was going through therapy, I don't think I could have lifted a cast iron skillet.
Good point. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. No, it was just a good size, and I knew I was using this for this recipe. My cast iron skillets are very heavy. They make smaller ones. I think I got this one at Walmart a few years ago. Quite honestly, I don't use it too much. When I do, I might blacken some fish in it, but any type of skillet will do. All right, these are looking really good. Hopefully, Yvonne, yours are doing well too. All right. I do have some coriander and cumin that I'm going to add again, traditional Mexican spices. So I always like to say when a recipe calls for spices that you're not familiar with, because cumin can be a little strong. So maybe start with a little bit, and then after it cooks for a little bit, taste it. And if you're like, okay, I can handle this, add a little bit more, because I think we've all added something and it's ruined the whole recipe. We're throwing the whole thing out. So yeah, just go a little bit easy. And too, I try like Aldi or Walmart or the dollar store. If you've never used that type of herb, buy it cheap, because if you don't like it, you don't want you to have to throw away a $3.99 spice bottle, right? Okay. While that's cooking down, we're going to go ahead and make our poblano sauce that will be mixed in with the zucchini. Process herb back out. And let's talk about the roasted pepper. All right, still a little warm, but So the skin just pulls right off, and it opened up as well. So someone had asked in one of the classes, see how that comes right off? Someone had asked in one of the classes, why do you have to peel the roasted tomatoes or roasted peppers? So one reason is that sometimes the food processor doesn't catch the skin, and you might be left with some strips in there, and it's not palatable, you know, when you have this a slimy piece of pepper skin, or if you're having, you know, roasted red peppers and they're on top of a nice piece of crusty bread and you bite into it, that skin might pull off and then you have skin hanging down. So it could be a vanity thing as well.
Hey, Michelle, there is a question. Okay.
Yeah. What was that question?
So we're wondering, the recipe calls for 4 peppers and you are using 1. So just trying to make sure we're not missing anything.
No, I roasted 3 before class, so I'm gonna show you that. Good question though. Listen, don't put it past me that I will leave out a major ingredient. I've done them. So I'm going to step aside to the sink. Just it's easier to rinse the seeds out. So that's what I did with the other 3, and I have them off to the side.
Yeah, I learned by watching. So I would have been thrown by that too, and just intuitively made 1 instead of 4. The visual would have overrode the recipe, probably in my case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to throw it right here in the food processor, but thank you for asking. I was telling Colleen before we went, before she let everyone in, that I was like, you got to catch me, because sometimes I'll leave whole ingredients out. So, and a lot of times it's our participants that catch me. And that's okay. I need that. These are good stir. Ooh, these are looking really good. So I would keep up with these refried beans every few minutes, because you don't want most of it sticking to the bottom. All right, let's go back to the sauce, and here are the ones I did before class. Okay, and we have another white onion. Can we use high speed? Yes, and do it in batches. Absolutely, absolutely. Here is half of a white onion. And I also have some garlic here. I am going to go ahead and cut this garlic a little bit, just to make sure the food processor catches it all. Add a little bit of salt. And last but not least, the recipe calls for vegetable broth, but guess what? I'm going to use some of the broth from the refried beans, since I spiced it up a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit to the refried beans as well, just a little. We're doing good on time, so that's a good thing. All right, so again, I have my 4 poblano peppers. I have my onions, garlic, and again, vegetable broth is what the recipe will say, but I'm using the bean broth from the simmered beans recipe. Oh my gosh. That smells really good. Poblano peppers have such a beautiful scent to them. And again, you saw I had just about my whole face in there and there was no heat. Now, if I was using ghost peppers, which are the highest on the SHU scale, my eyes probably would be watering. So there was nothing. It did not affect my nose at all. All right. So I'm done with that recipe. Before I pour this in, I'm going to let that cook a little bit and I'll talk about the last step that we're going to do. This out of the way. All right, there is a Mexican cheese called panela, and it can be difficult to find in the grocery store. Can you send the heat skip? Yeah, I can totally do that. It's really it's a great visual. So when I send the email with the recipes, I will include the Scoville heat unit scale. And also Erin has one more cooking class, and hers is all about pasta. And her last one is Saturday, the 25th. So not this Saturday, but next Saturday, she still has openings. So I will also include the link to Erin's classes in that email if you'd like to join her. You know, Erin always has great classes, and who doesn't love pasta, right? All right, where was I going with that? Oh, the panela cheese. So panela cheese is a little bit firmer, and so I don't know if I said this, but we have a few international markets near us here in the Norristown area. We have a very large Mexican community. The restaurants in this area are amazing. So we are very fortunate to have those near us. But it's a thicker type of cheese. It's thicker, but it's still soft. It's meant to slice and then lay in a frying pan. It won't melt all the way down. I mean, it'll get a little bit soft, but it is meant to fry on both sides. So to finish this recipe, we just cut this into a dice and finish it off. And it's really, really a nice flavor. It's delicate. And we always say cheese should be used as a condiment, right? From a heart health standpoint, and watching our saturated fat. So I'll put that there. And one thing I wanted to mention too, Colleen was very fortunate before COVID, before we were national. Erin and I used to go into our women's homes and cook with them. So Colleen was fortunate enough to have Erin come to her house and prepare 5 recipes with her. It was so much fun, and we truly miss doing that with our women. However, one thing we learned with COVID is that we can reach out across the country and be with even more of our community, showing them how to cook. So by far, this is awesome. But that was a fun time also, and I'm sure Colleen would agree. It sounded like you learned a lot from Erin.
I did, but my head was spinning too, because she made, she helped me make 5 things, and I've never made more than like 1 or 2 things at a time in my life. Because so I was like, wow, like the efficiency in a kitchen that you and her have is amazing to me. I just, I'm a 1 or 2, I don't want to get confused if I have too much going on.
Well, and I think too, we prep before the classes. Yeah, it looks impressive that I'm doing 3 recipes in an hour, but we prep so much. And it's so funny because we'll pick our recipes for the next session, and I'll call Erin and be like, why did I pick those? I'm spending 3 hours prepping. I mean, all pure enjoyment, don't get me wrong, but yeah, and that's why if you're doing one recipe, it's not bad, but especially those 5 recipes. And I'm sure she was in your house for a few hours, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think I needed a nap after that.
We would too. We would
Um,
too.
So we have a question. Do you know if vegan cheese slices would work for this?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you know if vegan cheese slices
Yes.
would work?
Yes, absolutely. And we had that question before. So absolutely. Yeah, if you want to leave the cheese out, if you add the cheese, I would do it once you spoon out your portion of it, because if you put the cheese on the whole thing, that might not last as long in the refrigerator. So by all means, use vegan cheese. Do not use cheese. If you would, here we go. Here's see the beautiful colors in this dish. Now, this, if you were to have this as a meal, of course it would be filling because there's a lot going on in there. However, I would add, if you're making it a main meal, I would add a protein to it, like beans, or have a piece of fish or chicken with it. That way it's more satiating, but it would work well as just a side dish. So if you're doing just a side dish, you're good. But if you want to make this your main meal, maybe adding some beans would be a great addition. All right, so that's the first recipe. And let's see if how these beans are doing. Give them a little more time while we do the last recipe. You know what? I think they're ready to go. Let me plate this. Oh, so good. All right, so these are our refried beans right here. And let me show you the thickness. And Yvonne, if yours needs to cook a little bit longer, that's fine. Or if you wanted to show yours, feel free to do that. But here's the thickness of it. See, it's not like soupy or anything. It's nice and firm. However, if you want it a little bit thinner, feel free to add more broth. But this is the consistency that I usually go for. So obviously I'm going to have leftovers, and I usually pair the beans with the zucchini and corn. So it makes a nice little plant-based meal. So anyway, there's that, and I'll bring it out. I added some cilantro. We'll talk about cilantro in a minute. I know there's always controversy surrounding cilantro. So let me get these off the burners. And we're ready to move on. Salsa bandera with jicama and pineapple. So, you know, we're used to the traditional salsa with tomatoes and some corn and some red onion. All are fabulous, you know, additions. I love a homemade salsa, but I thought I'd do a little bit of a twist. Bandera means flag, so a lot of different colors that you might see in the flag. Okay.
You need an assistant, Michelle.
Right.
Little kitchen assistant.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Maybe since my son is home from school, but I don't think I'm going to get my 17-year-old kid to help me. Probably not. We are starting off with a tomato base. So all I did was, these are Roma tomatoes, but if you want to use a beefsteak tomato, again, whatever you have on hand, if you need to use something up, tomatoes on the vine. So I sliced them and I took out the seeds. You can leave them in. I usually pour them and take the seeds out because I don't like the texture the next day. I feel like it kind of breaks down, and I don't enjoy that. So whatever you would like to do. So mine are poured and seeded. All right, so we have that. here I'm going to use some red onion, again, as I've been saying for the whole class. If you don't have a red onion, that's totally fine. And I will use this entire red onion. I love red onion. But good for you, Colleen, for having Erin come and see what it's all about and learn some things. That's always our intention. Okay, pineapple. I used a pre-sliced pineapple because in the midst of all the prep work, I thought I'd make life easy. Usually when I have company, I will buy a pre-cut pineapple, just if I'm making a lot of things, but expensive. Oh my goodness, expensive. So if you have the time, go with the regular pineapple and slice it up yourself, and then you'll have plenty of leftovers. How's everyone doing? Yvonne, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I just turned them off now, so I'll
Great.
heat them up again when my girls get home from school. They'll be excited.
Excellent. Okay, now I have some banana peppers. So banana peppers are nice and sweet. You can use something hotter. I love banana peppers. I will eat them right out of the jar. You know, some of us may have had these on a hoagie. Just a rough chop. It gives nice flavor and a tanginess to the salsa. Goes in.
So Nicole was saying that she's got a pineapple corer and it takes the fruit out of the pineapple really easily. And she loves it.
Does she?
Yeah, she said it's the best tool she's ever gotten to make prep work easier.
I'll have to try that. I'm always afraid. Sometimes I'm so short that I don't get enough height, but my husband's 6'4", so maybe he could do that for me. Okay, let's talk jicama. So this was a rather large jicama. And what jicama is, it's a Mexican bean, believe it or not. I mean, who would have thought a bean was this size? It's also been known as a Mexican turnip. It's sweet, mild, starchy. You know, it has the same texture as water chestnuts. So if you can't find a jicama, I got this at the international market. You can use water chestnuts, but it's really nice flavor. You can eat it plain. So I peeled it with a vegetable peeler and I sliced it and just cut it into strips. Doing a lot of dicing today. This would be great to add to a regular green salad. Like I said, just have as a nice refreshing snack. And I've seen jicama that is smaller than this, so you don't need to buy something this large, and it will last a long time in the refrigerator.
Can you define a long time?
Thank you. Sometimes Erin and I, we say all the time, we can't assume. It could last up to 2 weeks in the refrigerator. Thank you.
Mine would be growing things.
Yeah, exactly, like a science experiment. So let's talk cilantro. So there's nothing in between. Either you love cilantro or you don't love cilantro. And I've heard from some of our women who have gone through treatment that they no longer like cilantro. So there is a chemical in our body called a soapy aldehyde. And there are mutations that make you more sensitive to cilantro, and it might taste like soap. Some people say cilantro tastes like soap, and that is so true. So please don't tell your family that you have a mutation. We all have different mutations in our body. But again, you're just more sensitive to that soapy aldehyde. I love cilantro, so I'm not sensitive to that soapy aldehyde. So I'm just going to give this a rough chop. If you do not want to use cilantro, either leave it out or you can use parsley. So either a flat leaf parsley or a curly leaf parsley. Flat leaf parsley is a little more flavorful, but curly parsley is totally fine, totally fine. And it gives the salsa a light, a lot of color. So I like to use that. All right, let's squeeze some lime in this. You could also use lemon if you'd like. I think if you wanted to use an orange or a mandarin, I think that would give it some nice flavor as well. So I will be using the entire lime. Pour that in there. Some olive oil and a little bit of salt. Stir. Now this is good to eat plain. You could have it with some tortilla chips. You could have some to top your fish or your chicken with this.
Hey, Michelle, can we
Yes.
use bottled lime juice instead of
Oh
real
my
lime?
gosh, that exact question came up on the wellness day the
Yeah,
other
well,
day.
Samara, yeah, she asked
But
in the chat.
okay, yeah. So it is totally fine to use a bottled lime juice, especially when you're maybe you have some neuropathy going on or you just don't have the strength. Excellent suggestion. Thank you for bringing that up. So by all means, and really the only difference is I substitute, yeah, substitute parsley for sure. The only difference is, you know, store-bought lime juice, it's just been sitting on the shelf a little bit longer. Fresh is best, of course, but you know, if you're just using it as a flavoring, then why not use it, you know, so perfectly fine. All right, so this is the finished product of the salsa. So salsa bandera with jicama and pineapple. So I guess all different colors of a flag. But here's what I like to do, just for a little bit of a twist. Here I have a baked potato and just spread that across. And then you could do something different with it. All right, any questions? Bring out everything. Any questions? Oh, I need to run. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you for being here. All right, so here we have our 3 dishes. We have our salsa, our zucchini and corn with poblano sauce, and the refried beans. Refried beans are my favorite. So, but they're all good. Do you freeze unused cilantro? You can. What I would do is put them in little ice cube trays, maybe with a little bit of liquid or olive oil. That's usually how we can freeze our herbs. If you want to keep it in the refrigerator, roll it in a damp paper towel and it should get you through the week. And I know it's so frustrating. You buy herbs and then it's like you use a piece of it and then it's done. So, or you can grow your own. You are so welcome. Any questions, just let me know. Excuse me. This week, there will be links excuse me, next week probably, there will be links to sign up for our July and August classes. And Erin's theme will be watermelon. So 3 different recipes, or she might be doing 4 with all different types of watermelon dishes. Mine is all about eating for that to help us fight inflammation in our body. All plant foods help us fight inflammation, but there's a few that are really up there. So full disclosure, I'm not totally there yet. I haven't picked them. I have a bunch of recipes that I'll be testing in the next week. But as always, we love when you join. Thank you so much. You can join as many times as you like. No squares on your passport. If you try these dishes, please send pictures. We love that. We, with your permission, we send them to our social media team. It helps let the rest of our community know that this is what we do and how much fun and the beautiful dishes that we create. So everyone have a good afternoon.